Hi, I'm Jaymie.
Hi, I'm Kelly.
And this is the BodySmartPodcast.
And today we are talking about why menstruation matters.
And it's going to be bloody brilliant.
Boom, boom.
Today we're talking about all things menstruation.
A bit of a mouthful. Menstruation.
Menstruation, yes.
We
definitely.
are. And it's an interesting topic because I feel like we are only just getting into realms where people aren't like, period. Like you can actually say the word period.
Yeah.
Like that's allowed.
Where we are now in Avenue HQ, they actually do, they leave like tampons out on all the toilets and stuff and that. And even that's like still new and taboo to just be like in every toilet that there's a box of tampons there if people need them.
And there should be because it's expensive.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, some people don't have the funds to buy products for themselves.
Yeah.
I know I definitely didn't at university, and I may have borrowed some from those machines that you get on the walls.
Yeah.
But
I mean, I was just asking, I was like, when tampons would first come about?
I have no idea.
Si can find out? Or?
Fact master.
Yeah. But yeah, like, I mean, God, because the reason that come up is because we were looking for a title for this podcast.
And they were awful.
They were all awful. And one of them was The Rag. And I was like, why would they want to name the podcast The Rag? And he was saying because people used to use newspaper or rags before tampons were...
Just like a strip of cloth.
Yeah. Luckily something that I never have to experience. And I have a lot of empathy and compassion for women and with... Well, my hormones stay pretty level all month round.
Do you know what I would really love? And I think we should get a commitment on this podcast. You know those machines that you can get?
I would wear one.
So like the replicate like contractions of pregnancy or period pains. Because I see them online and I'm never sure like, because guys freak out.
Yeah, because it's just, I think they're just getting like electrical shocks in the stomach.
Yeah, so does it not replicate the actual feeling?
I don't know.
We need some fact man.
Yeah.
But
1931.
1931.
Well, apparently it goes even further back to that. 1776, there's a report
Of a tampon.
where they made the tampon from tightly rolled vinegar soaked linen.
Ooh.
Wow.
So,
A rag.
A rag, yeah.
There you go.
So 1971 was 31.
Wow.
that's the 21st century version.
Right. Okay.
Are you looking at pictures?
No.
Probably
Yeah,
for the best. But yeah, it's an interesting topic because it's not one historically that has been okay to talk about. It's sort of one of those sort of like a shameful thing. And even now if you're on, you might like go to your bag and get your tampon, no longer a rag, and sort of slide it up your sleeve and discreetly go. And it's really secretive. So I'm pleased that we're talking about it.
Definitely. I know when I was doing a lot of coaching, I would ask a lot of the women that I coached, one of the first questions on their consultation was like, do you track your period? And I could tell the women who had had conversations with men about their period before and the ones that hadn't, because they look shocked. Like, why Jaymie just asked me about my period? Like, what the fuck? But then we would have a conversation and they would see that I would understand it more, and it was because it would be in their best interest maybe to track the cycle and things that we could do. And then like that, the guards and the layers would go down. But I do truly believe for some of these women I'd spoken to, I'm the first guy that they've ever spoken to about their menstrual cycle or period.
Which is crazy. And you get so much stick for talking about periods. And you do a lot of work helping women with like symptoms of menopause and how to sort of minimize those symptoms, and, got lots of free resources available.
Yeah. And
I've seen the inbox of messages of like ladies raging, like, how dare you, a man, talk to me about menopause?
Yeah, which is wild. Who was the speaker? I was speaking to Stacey, and Stacey works with us at BodySmart. She's one of the head coaches, and she was saying when she went through her pregnancy, near enough every single person that she's seeing there to do with anything to do with her pregnancy was a guy. And it's just, and she was like, there was no issue. They were an expert. They knew what they were doing. I trusted them. I had a healthy, happy pregnancy. It was all good, but there's just different stigmas around men's health and women's health about what you can and can't talk about.
And almost like you'll never know because you can't experience it. But I genuinely think on lots of female related topics, the guys that we work with are the most educated. They know the most stuff because they know that someone's expecting them not to know.
And I think you can approach any situation as long as you have the empathy. Just because you can't personally maybe experience it doesn't mean that you can't have the empathy or compassion for someone to not necessarily relate, but to help and to feel what they're feeling with them.
Yeah. I mean, education is everything, and learning about what happens as a man and a woman, because, you know, all of you men have women in your lives that, you know, have different symptoms, and to know yourself, what they're going through, or, you know, to have certain expectations and be able to offer support is really helpful.
Yeah.
But it starts really with what we're taught in school. And I personally, from my personal experience of what I was taught, I don't think it's good enough. I don't know what you were taught at school.
Very little. I think it was like how to put a condom on a banana or something.
Nothing to do with periods.
That's literally as far as I can remember. There's a banana on Claudia's desk.
I was looking at that. It's really weird and like.
And there's a condom there as well, because apparently when she was having sex education in school or anything to do with menstrual cycle, whatever it was, she was in a pair, and the girl who she was with got to put the condom on the banana, not her. And she said she's always felt like she's missed out, so that was her secret Santa this year: a banana and a condom.
Nice.
But yeah, I think at least for I'm 31. At least when I was in school, like that's the peak of what I can remember. I don't know if that's just me being a teenage boy.
Well, all I remember is being like taught that you bleed once a month, and I don't know whether it's because I wasn't paying attention or like the way it was delivered, but there was nothing else. And I remember my first period, and I was like, what do I do? I went for tampon, like that, and that's a strange first step. But and then it's like, well, what do you do? And you know, and I didn't want to speak to anyone about it because it was that like dirty, shameful. I've had so I didn't tell my mum or my sister, but there were tampons in the house. They weren't in the box, which meant it didn't say. How the hell do you use this? Oh my God, have you seen those videos online of women showing their other halves how to use a tampon? And they're like, what?
It's wild. I mean, so I've got 3 younger sisters, and you know, my mum was obviously great with all of them, because obviously I think first time you even have a period can be very frightening, unknown time for a woman or a young girl at that point. And my mum was obviously like very sensitive around that, but then she would also be like, she'd try and help educate me as well a little bit about, like, you know, because it's a very new experience for them. I'm a little bit older, and just like maybe like if they were like freaking out or acting in a certain way, you know, so like that was like my sort of first experience, not from school, but obviously starting to see what was happening with my sisters as they were the sort of coming of that age.
Did it all happen the same sort of age for them? Do you remember?
I think it was slightly different. Yeah, I think it started happening earlier for each sibling.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But there is some science that periods are now happening for girls younger and younger, and that is linked to the fact that most, you know, our younger generations are growing up more and more overweight.
Yeah.
So the excess fat and the leptin within the fat is bringing on periods earlier.
Wow. Yeah.
Which is crazy, because we're in a generation also where, you know, we're not just baby making machines, and let's remember the whole point of having a period is to prepare you for pregnancy. So the fact that, you know, generationally as women, we're mostly delaying our pregnancies to have careers.
Yeah,
and
I think it's over last year or the year before, over 50% of women now have not had a baby over the age of 30, which is like, it's the first time it's ever happened, but it backs up exactly what you're saying.
Yeah, and I think was I 34?
Yeah.
What am I now? 35. Yeah, so
maybe I can check this for me in terms of fact checking, but I think actually when you become 33 or even 34 for pregnancy, you're actually classed as geriatric.
Yes. Older.
Yeah.
And from sort of 35 onwards is when things really start slowing down for you with your menstrual cycles leading up to menopause.
Perimenopause, menopause.
So, you know, we're really sort of cutting a fine line of, if we decide to have children, you know, the optimal place for it to be in our lives, you know, and because we're starting periods earlier because of the how overweight we are.
Because you only have so many eggs. Yeah.
Exactly. So, you know, if we're starting earlier, we're bringing that number
Yeah.
earlier in our lives, but we're delaying pregnancies because we want careers. And may I just say, you don't have to have babies. And I know the whole point of having a menstrual cycle is to prepare for pregnancy, but women are not baby making machines, and we don't have to have babies, and people can make decisions not to and live very happy lives and probably less stressful with less wrinkles and more sleep.
Definitely more sleep. Yeah.
More sleep.
Yeah.
So interesting fact that, our obesity levels increasing is decreasing
and
with age.
Unfortunately as well, like that's not showing down. I think by 2030, 50% of the US population is going to be obese, and around, I think it's 70 or 80% are going to be overweight, which is just like staggering numbers. And there's plenty of research and studies to show, like, if you have even one obese parent, the likelihood of the child also being obese is, just remarkably higher as well, which makes sense.
Yeah.
But so again, you can imagine those things are only going to continue to keep going one way.
Yeah, which is terrifying.
A little bit. Yeah, it really is. Yeah.
So one of the things, obviously, that we can do is manage the way that we eat, which will help us in terms of maintaining a healthy weight and not being overweight.
Yeah.
Which is increasingly difficult when you're going through a monthly cycle.
Yeah. I mean, definitely. I mean, hormones, quite frankly, do rule the world. They have a massive impact on how we think, how we feel, how we look as well. And ultimately how we behave. So they have a huge influence on that. For most men, our hormone levels are going to be pretty consistent,
You lucky ducks.
throughout the month. I do know there's the only time they can really have a sharp decrease is off a lack of sleep. And I know this because Matt Walker, who's wrote a book called Why We Sleep, he actually started his TED Talk with testicles. He was like, men's testicles will be on average 30% smaller when they have less than 6 hours sleep.
What, just immediately?
Well, because they're just producing less testosterone. So, you if guys, if you want bigger balls, get more sleep. But other than maybe sleep, alcohol can have obviously an impact, and dietary needs and everything else. But for most part, men's hormones are a lot more consistent than, say, women's.
Yes.
Yeah.
You don't have the potential Jekyll and Hyde scenarios going on. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, having worked with so many women, you'll know sort of the most common complaints, if you will, of the monthly cycle and the struggles that many of us go through. Yeah,
it's... Again, I think a lot of women maybe don't track the cycle, and I think where tracking your cycle can become really important and really empowering is it allows you to become more self-aware. And I've talked about self-awareness so much in this podcast, but like if you truly know yourself and like know how you act and feel and behave in certain situations, including maybe how your cycle makes you feel at certain points of the month, you can really grab the bull by the horns there and either take actions before that, or precautionary actions that you're going to be able to feel your best in those situations. So one thing that is everyone should know is that your menstrual cycle can often be very unique to you. It's very rare that I speak to every woman and it's like, oh yeah, we all have bang on 28 days and we all feel exactly the same on these days and all this. It's like, it's not the case. There's genetic predispositions, there's stuff to do with your childhood that can have an impact, your diet, your training, just your overall lifestyle can all have a huge impact on your menstrual cycle. And having a consistent menstrual cycle is a sign of having a healthy body. We'll have a lot of clients who don't have a menstrual cycle, don't have a period. They do have a menstrual cycle. They don't have a period. And this is normally one of the signs of one of their vital systems shutting down because they're not the healthiest that they could be. And this is often because they've done chronic yo-yo dieting. They eat super, super low calorie all the time. They get a lack of nutrients in the diet and they lose their periods because of it. So there's just so many. So it's not just a one size fits all approach with somebody's menstrual cycle.
And that's the thing about science. It's the average. So, you get a scientific paper and it's the average person. This is what happens to the average person. Well, if you don't sit within that average frame, then you're sitting outside of it thinking, why am I so different to everyone else? So, even these sort of rules that we know exist, they are scientifically backed. If you don't sit in the middle of the pack, you need to know that you're not abnormal. You're just not the average.
Yeah.
You existed within that scientific experiment. Your results just weren't shown because they weren't clubbed in where everyone else was. So you're exactly right. And to if you've got a 30-day period or 35-day period cycle and, someone else has got a shorter cycle, you don't have to sit there and think, oh, there's something wrong with me.
Yeah.
It's just getting to know yourself. And even within your own cycle, you're going to have variations. You could be like clockwork 8 months of the year, and then all of a sudden within your own cycle, something's happened. But without question, tracking your cycle is just amazing.
It's a self-awareness tool to put you more in the driving seat with how you feel on a day-to-day basis. There might be parts in your cycle where you feel great and you've got maybe a slight spike in testosterone and can push for PBs and train a little bit harder. There might be times in your cycle where you've got no energy. You feel like just battered and hungry and lethargic. And sometimes, and if you don't know that, you just wake up one day like, why do I feel so horrible? And maybe more negative and whatever it could be. But if you don't know that, you can start to question yourself. You can start to judge yourself really harshly. But if you do know that and you're expecting it to happen, doesn't mean that it's not shit still. But it means that you can be more prepared for how you're going to feel. And I say this a lot, just not judge yourself so harshly. And I think men are bad for this, but I think women can be really bad for just how hard you can judge yourself in certain situations to always just be showing up at your best. Especially
if you're not feeling your best emotionally, to then sort of just batter yourself because you haven't shown up exactly how you might want to show up. It can be tough. But one of the things that I really enjoyed, I was coached by Anna at BodySmart after having my baby and lost 55 pounds.
Wow.
One of the amazing things about working with her, I do track my cycle, but she would just know. And she would never say you're about this, you're about to ovulate, but she'd be like, where are you in your cycle? Because, my cycle does certain things for me that it might not do for your average person. And it flares my arthritis. I have very hormonally driven autoimmune disease. So, at certain points in our coaching journey together, she would be like, where are you at? Knowing that a change was about to happen and that
why would she know that? Why would she be in tune to know that with you?
Because we'd had those conversations previously about how it impacts me. And so she was aware of my cycle previously. So she knew, that I was about to have a period because she knew that when I'd had my period, the month before and the month before. So she was sort of tracking my cycle alongside me tracking my cycle. But she was ahead of the game, whereas I was sort of just putting in the data and I would quite retrospectively, because, I'm a busy mum now, I would be like, very much like what you were saying, like, oh, that's why I felt that way yesterday. But that's retrospective. Whereas having Coach Anna by my side, she was very much like, where are you in your cycle? Genuine question, but knowing that, my hormones were about to shift and that I could take actions to control my controllables. And there is so much within your cycle that you can't control. It just happens to you. But there are also controllables within that.
Yeah, and there's maybe even things that you can do ahead of time to set yourself up for further success. So if you know at a certain point in your cycle, you just tend to feel a lot more lethargic or feel more tired or hungry, you can be like, right, next week I'm going to really make a point of prioritizing extra sleep, or instead of going pushing for hard workouts, I'm going to dial it back and have deload weeks on that week. Or again, it's what I'm saying here is not a one size fits all approach. It's just getting to know yourself and your cycle so you can take actions that best self-serve you. And then a big one that happens with a lot of our clients, and I'm curious if this happened with yourself, is at certain points in their cycle, they would see a spike in weight. So obviously a huge part of what we do is we help ladies lose weight and keep it off forever. But, you can almost see it. Like, we look at thousands of graphs, don't we, of people's weight loss journeys. And it's always like spiking up and down, because that weight loss is never linear, but it's like spiking up and down, but trending down. And then you get to this like 1 week and then there's just spike up. And it kind of stays there for like the whole week, and it might like spike up and down, but it's like, a couple of pounds higher. It can be, I've seen, I'd probably say like 2 to 5 pounds is like a more normal average that I see, but I've seen some ladies gain like 7-8 pounds over their cycle and then drop it straight back off the next week. If they mean they'll just stay consistent, is that something you experience?
Yeah, and I actually spike around ovulation as well. So I spike twice.
Oh, okay.
Which is interesting. And I wouldn't know that without my cycle or like tracking my cycle. And, we say this on pretty much all of our podcasts that, most of our clients are perfectionists, all or nothing thinkers. And they think very black and white in these realms. So, for instance, they might be like, I'm doing all the things right, I'm showing up for myself, and my weight is just spiked. F it, like I'm going to throw in the towel. I'm going to eat everything, and I'm going to do none of my movement. And it's that very 100% or 0%, and sort of self-sabotaging, I suppose. But when you understand why the scale is spiked, you don't have that sort of mini freak out. You become aware of what's going on in your cycle, why it's happened, and, have the faith, the fact that you are doing the right things. Great job.
Yeah.
Fat gain and scale weight gain are not always correlated. They are very connected, and you definitely see a trend. However, you can gain weight overnight on the scale, but have not gained any fat. You could even have lost fat, but the scale's gone up. And often that is around your period.
Yeah, definitely. And I think just even that's something that we educate our clients on, is those normal weight anomalies that you can have. And again, all we're doing there is giving them a self-awareness tool. And it's the same as a tracking your cycle. Tracking your cycle is a self-awareness tool to just understand how you may think and feel at certain points in your cycle. And then off that, you can take actions that are, like we said, are more self-serving.
Yeah. So I think the biggest thing really is that point in your cycle when you are so hungry and you feel like no amount of food is ever going to fill up your tummy.
Like an empty bucket.
Yeah. And again, that will be different for everyone. And that's why tracking your cycle is so important. However, what you see scientifically in all of the studies is that is at the end of your luteal phase. So just before your period. And that might be, a week before your period. It might be a couple of days before your period.
It can vary.
But it's when your estrogen tanks, basically. So your hormones shift, and you have less estrogen, depending on where you are, which region. What do you say?
For
estrogen.
I say
estrogen.
estrogen.
What do you say, Si?
Estrogen, yeah.
Estrogen. Is that US?
It might be US, yeah.
I talk a lot of US since I've started BodySmart.
I said vitamin the other day, and
Did
he just died, because we should say vitamin, but yeah.
I put in our sort of group where we live, our estate WhatsApp, about like which day was trash day, and everyone was like,
excuse me?
Rubbish day. No, I speak American now.
Yeah.
Anyway, so estrogen. When that goes down, you feel hungry. So you've got receptors in your brain that will pick up on estrogen, and it will help you to feel full and content. So if you are then low on estrogen, you feel less full and less content. So eating the same amount of food won't hit the same buttons for you.
Yeah, won't be as satiating.
Yeah. So, and it's multifaceted as well. So it also impacts your hunger hormone ghrelin. So you produce less of it. So you feel more hungry, you feel less full and less content, less satiated. So it was really important to know is, you're not crazy. This is a real thing that is happening to you in your brain, neurologically, physiologically. You are not weak or lacking willpower. Which I think is how we can feel, just be more motivated. There's a real things happening inside my body as to why I feel more hungry. And I think it's just really important for people to know that.
Yeah.
Not just know that, but take some control over it.
Definitely.
So what can you do? You can eat more filling foods. You can eat more protein. You can increase your volume without really increasing your calories. So your low calorie foods that have lots of volume.
Yeah.
So you can eat a huge salad to accompany whatever you're eating that night, your bowl of pasta. And you haven't eaten a great deal more calories, but your tummy is so much more full.
Yeah.
So you can control so many aspects within, your cycle, if you just know when they're going to happen.
For sure. Yeah. And it's, because we've just coached so many women now, I think sometimes as well, giving yourself permission to do that. So there's a lady called Jo I used to coach, and I remember her being at a point in her cycle, and she was like, oh my God, I'm just ravenous. I just want to eat. And I'm like, what is it that you want to eat? And she was like, I just want to eat some toast. And I was like,
Eat the toast.
Go make yourself some toast then. And it was just, I was like, why? And I was like, you eating 300 calories of toast right now and satisfying that craving and only being 300 calories over what your deficit is still a deficit for what you're in. And you're satisfying a craving instead of just sat there thinking about food.
Yeah.
And then it got to the point where like that did just keep becoming a consistent trend for her, that she was always feeling about 3 or 4 days of a cycle, just a lot hungrier. And I was like, how about like on this, instead of being in a fat loss phase and trying to lose weight, how about we just even go at maintenance or even a little bit above maintenance on those calories? You don't have to eat them all, but you know that they're there as a choice and an option. We'd still go for all the satiating food, like you said, and voluminous food. So prepare for maybe that time in a cycle. But the fact that she just had permission to eat more and could eat more, it just made such a significant difference. And instead of her maybe going through either at that point in a cycle and it just being a massive struggle in terms of losing weight every month, it then just got so much easier and allowed her to go the distance to see the results that she wanted.
Yeah, and it's important when you often when you have, an intense craving, which is down to the shifts in hormones that you're, actually experiencing. It's not you being weak. Those intense cravings, often if you just allow yourself to have that bit of chocolate or that bit of toast, you've satisfied it and you move on, versus you sitting there with it sort of gnawing away at you that you just want it and I can't have it. And let's be honest, ladies, if we're told we can't have something, we want it.
You want it more, don't you? Like
Yes.
you don't, instead of just being like, oh, I'll have a couple of rounds of extra toast or I'll have an extra meal or whatever else, then because it's I can't have it. If you do cave, it's now I want it all. It's not just one biscuit, it's the whole packet.
And I've screwed it all up. I didn't do what I said I was going to do, so sod it. I'm having it all.
Yeah.
That very all or nothing mentality.
I'm never trying to generalize with women at all in this sense, but at certain points in the cycle, there would be some ladies that I would coach and would struggle to just rationalize decisions around that time, especially around food, and just sometimes giving more context around being able to 400 calories for 4 days over the whole month. It's not really going to impact your goals. If anything, if you're going to feel better for that, I'm going to show up better, and your day is not going to be as miserable because you don't feel hungry. That's a win. That's a big win.
Yeah.
And just being able to rationalize that context, to zoom out a little bit. And those women know that as well, but maybe at that point in their cycle, they just are not able to contextualize it as much as maybe they need to.
Yeah. And there's a body of research that says that you use more calories in that luteal phase of your cycle, and that sort of last bit before you have your period. So I think it's 240 and
it's something around that. Yeah, I think
up to 600.
Yeah, it can vary depending on the same with everyone's basal metabolic rate, depending on how tall you are, how much you weigh. Genetic predisposition can also have an impact on that.
So even that slice of toast slathered in butter might not actually be any additional calories to you at that time. It might not, you still be in a deficit for that day. And like you said, it's such a small point in time versus what you do on the other, 20 maths, Kelly, 20 days of the year, 21 days.
You can look at how this can be like a complete recipe for disaster with a weight loss journey or your health journey. If you are not feeling your best, you're feeling more negative, you're struggling to rationalize things, you're feeling really hungry, and then you eat a little bit more and jump on the scales, and maybe you've not even gained any weight or fat, but the scales are up 5 pounds. You're just like, fuck this shit. You know what I mean? It's just
why am I bothering?
What is the point? And it's take all those things into context. It's just that's a recipe to fail versus track your cycle, get to know your body, get to know your weight anomalies, give yourself the scales have gone up a couple of pounds, but they'll come back down.
Yeah.
Having all of that education and self-awareness and those tools just allows you to, again, not judge yourself so harshly, be a little bit more at peace with your decisions and how you're feeling. And ultimately, go on to keep striving your goals, whether your goals are to lose weight or just to maintain and think and feel better and be healthier.
Yeah. And I think education is potential power. It gives you the power to take different actions, to take precautionary measures, to control your controllables, to think and feel a different way. And if you're, on a period, I think it's on a period for 10 years of your
10 years of your life, yeah.
If you're letting that run away with you every single month and it's making you miserable and it's not your actions aren't aligning with your goals and you're just not feeling good about it, 10 freaking years.
Is that right? I'm trying to do the math in my head now.
Maths is not my strong suit, as you
Right,
well know.
we've got Simon, haven't we? So I'm sure.
Some numbers.
Yeah, you get some numbers, but yeah, that is a ridiculously long time.
It's
Yeah.
a big portion of your life
It's a
to
huge part of your
feel
life.
out of
Yeah.
control and to not feel like you have anything you can do about that when actually you do.
Mm-hmm.
And that starts with, tracking your cycle, understanding at what's the average, when does estrogen spike and dip.
Yeah.
When does it spike and dip for you personally? What is your average? And like we said, it is going to be different for you month to month, but you'll probably find a trend.
Yeah.
And then you can get ahead of it. Get yourself a fantastic coach like Anna who will even just get ahead of it for you.
Yeah. No, definitely. It's a tool like so many things that can allow you to become more aware, become more proficient, and ultimately just make better decisions so you feel better, which is what everybody wants.
It's just reminded me actually of an Instagram rage that I had.
Oh, right. Yeah. Yeah, and I think I know what you're going to say. I think this is why when I talk about anything to do with cycles, I'm very aware that it is just not a one-size-fits-all approach. What works for one person most certainly does not work for the other. But what did this guy say?
So there was this guy on Instagram that went on this huge tirade of he was basically bigging up his wife, and good for him, to have your wife's back like that is awesome. But he was basically saying, my wife still goes up to the gym and still crushes her PBs when she's on her period. And so he was basically saying, if she can do it, why can't you? You're just making excuses. You're letting things get on top of you. And what he was trying to say was absolutely right. What he was trying to say is, don't let these things hold you back. There are controllables, exactly what we have said. But the way he went about it and his message was completely wrong.
Yeah.
Because he was saying every single person is just like my wife.
Yeah.
And she's freaking rock star and she doesn't get any of these symptoms and she still shows up, hits PBs. So why aren't you doing it? You suck. Is basically what he said. And I was outraged. He was a coach, so he should know better. So I reached out to him to say, I understand the principle of what you were trying to say, but I really cannot stress this enough. I really dislike how you've gone about it. And we had a really honest, open discussion and a back and forth about how people are different. And, his wife might not have any symptoms, but there are other people, and so many people who can't do anything except curl up on the sofa and cry with a hot water bottle, taking all the paracetamol, and they still feel like absolute shite, And to hold that person to the same standard as his wife, who hasn't had any symptoms or, mild symptoms at best, is just unfair. And for a coach to do it is just...
It lacks empathy.
Oh,
yeah.
And it's just not on. And we had this conversation, and I'm really down for this because I think everyone can learn and grow. And if they have a growth mindset and can admit, that their wrongdoings, they're in a great space and they're a good person ultimately. And he ended up taking down the post and apologizing and went away and did some more research and study.
Fair play to him. Yeah.
And we've been in touch ever since, but it just sort of reminded me of, there is no one size fits all. And just because you see one person, a certain way, doesn't mean you're wrong for being a different way. And I mean, even just the adverts on TV of, don't let your period stop you, go and ride that horse, girl. Like, hell no, I'm not riding a horse on my period. Like, I am that person on the sofa crying. And it just makes people feel like when they're not able to, hold themselves to those high standards, that they're weak and they suck. And it's just not the case. You just get different symptoms to different degrees to everyone else.
Yeah, it comes down to, and we talk about this like a comparison, comparisonitis, I think we've called it a couple of times, where people are just different, and that's okay. Comparing how you feel and think at a certain situation to somebody else, it doesn't serve you. Just learning how to navigate what's going to work best for you, becoming the best version of you is always should be your number one priority, not just what works for him or her, whatever else. I do fully believe success leaves clues, and we can learn off other people to see success in other areas. But if I were to say the people who are the best at navigating, or the most successful at navigating their menstrual cycle, are the ones that have probably tracked the cycle, know their body and know themselves inside out, don't judge themselves too harshly when they feel or think a certain way because they know they probably feel and think a certain way, and they've created a roadmap to success in those areas, instead of being like, well, that person's wife does this, or this woman does that, or Julian accountant's able to do this. Like it doesn't matter. Like what's going to be the best for you in that situation in that time. Because I'm always very conscious of, and we have to be as health professionals, because I feel like it can go the other way, and a big thing that we have at BodySmart is cutting the BS.
Yeah.
And I'm very conscious of always enabling people.
Mm-hmm. What can you do? There's an obstacle, but something is
going to be better than nothing, and finding what's the most that you can do. And some people are like, well, what do you mean you're saying the most, Jaymie? Like, all I want to do is, get on the couch and curl up each day. And it's like, if that's the most that you can do, don't judge yourself so harshly for doing it. Like, that's okay.
Your 100% on one day is not the same as your 100% on a different day when the circumstances have changed.
And you don't need to compare that to someone else. No. And it's not to say that you might not be able to do things to like alleviate symptoms or to feel better at certain points in your cycle. You probably can, but then that's a journey to explore and to find out what those actions could be again, so you can feel your best at that time.
Yeah. So takeaways then. What's the most you can do?
Yeah.
Whether that's you don't actually do your workout that day, you take a walk, or you do something lighter, a bit of more relaxational yoga. What can you do on that day?
Yeah.
Don't compare yourself to others.
Don't compare yourself to others. Track your cycle.
Track your cycle. Big one. Ding, 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 ding.
Talk to more people. I think just talking more about like not to go down the comparison, but like we like in the office, like we talk about periods and menstrual cycles with the ladies that work here. Like it's not an issue, like because I'll know if because there'll be like 3 hot water bottles in the office that day. Or sometimes people want to say, oh, can they work from home because they may be getting really bad like cramps, and they can be conversations that you can maybe have with. I think that it can be really powerful conversations you can have with your partner or you can have with your boss. Like if you don't have to do the commute to work when you're feeling a certain way in your cycle, and that makes you feel a bit better over those couple of days, fantastic. If not, you can't. But if you never ask, you never know. And like even sometimes I think just like communicating with your partner and stuff, if there's anything that they could do, just hopefully that you can both have a better time around that point in your cycle. So yeah.
My key takeaways are control your controllables. Yeah. So you can plan your food. So when your estrogen drops, you can eat more protein, eat higher fiber, more voluminous foods. And my second takeaway is we're going to get Jaymie one of those machines to put on himself and just see him squirm, I think.
Okay, I'll do it.
It's a deal.
Yeah.